Rumi, I can see you. Arvind, I can see you as well. Arvind, feel free to like be on off, mute yourself. I can hear myself somewhere.
Rumi. Yeah. What happened?
Okay, sorry. We are now live. And okay, so Rumi, we're live. So I'll just start our show for today. This is the 11th episode 11 of Lawyers, Artists, and Others Talk Law, Love, and Equity. This is actually episode 12. We had an episode 0. So in our form of counting, it's now the 12th episode, but it's episode 11. Today is a very special day. I suppose it's the 14th of June 2020, and it's special by itself. And it's also been a kind of heavy day. We lost an actor to depression. It's very unfortunate, and needn't have happened, but it did happen. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about what it means to be with ourselves and come out to ourselves, each other, and society at large, and how we think about acceptance. This is a broadcast media format inspired by love for beauty and love for wisdom, right? In the first hour, we're going to feature Rumi Harish. Rumi is a classically trained Hindustani musician, and he sings beautifully. And we can't wait to enjoy whatever is going to come out of the session, whether it's conversation and whatever else that Rumi would like to share with us. And in the second hour and a half, we're going to have Dipankar Panth, who's a very close friend of mine, Arvind Narrain, another very close friend, Aarti, who I hope is a new friend, and Rumi again, continuing in our conversation. And yeah, so it's good to have you all here. We're very happy to be alive, and hopefully we can continue to celebrate that, at least in the short term. So, hello, Rumi. It's good to have you here.
Hi.
How are you feeling? How's your day been?
I'm quite okay. Yeah, was quite shocked with Sushant's suicide, but yeah, getting on. Yeah.
We all are. I mean, it was like, it's not like we don't know people who commit suicide. It happens so often. But there's something about it happening to someone who's loved by so many people, right? And it just feels like it's someone who was one of us who passed away, and really actually forces us to think about it in a way that we don't usually notice on a day-to-day kind of basis. So, so anyway, Rumi, it's nice to have you here. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with us. What shall we do? Will you sing for us? Do you want to recite for us? How shall we spend our time?
I've chosen to sing some short pieces because, as I told you, and I don't mind telling everybody that I'm on T-shirts and my voice is, and also it's a strange combination of T-shirts plus menopause. So my pitch is really going down, and I really don't have my electronic tanpura here, so I can't even play. I don't know if I can play from this thing. So I'll sing short pieces, and there might be cracks in my voice. I'm still practicing now. I'm like again practicing. I'm going back to my initial years of practice to for my voice, so that it develops in a very proper manner even after the voice cracks and shifts to another pitch and all that. So I'll begin singing if you want. And yeah.
Sure, Rumi. And thank you for doing this. It's very brave of you, because like we don't like being imperfect in public, right? It's only a student who has the humility, or someone who wants to be a good student who has the humility to uh, learn all over again and fail well all over again. So I suppose it's a testament to your courage, actually, for being brave enough to do this. I don't know if I could have had the strength to do that myself. So
No, in fact, I postponed my gender journey and to take this decision of changing and at least expressing myself or my gender
Mm.
For the reason of voice and music, I was very scared. Then somehow I picked up the courage and I said, let me figure out. My voice cannot go that bad also, because I've trained really hard for it. If
Mm.
it means training same again, second time in life, I'm quite ready for it. So let us figure out. Okay, so I'll start with Khusro.
Yeah. Yeah. So start, Rumi. I'll leave you to take us where you would like to.
हे खुसरो दरिया प्रेम का हे खुसरो दरिया प्रेम का जो उल्टी वाह की धार, जो उल्टी वाह की धार, हे जो उबरा सो डूब गया, जो उबरा सो डूब गया, जो डूबा सो पार. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. This the raga itself was so nice. So it feels like I can still hear it ringing in my ear. Can you tell us what that means? Why did you sing that for us?
So you said that, love for beauty and love for wisdom. This has both. This is an amazing couplet by Khusro, where he says that Khusro is a stream of love, where the stream has its what do you call, its current running upside down.
Mm.
So it goes against the current. So the one who swims across, and jo ubara, who the one who swims across and manages to reach the uh, bank, is the one who has lost. Jo duba sopar, the person who drowns in Khusro's love stream is the one who actually crosses.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I have to say I agree with Mr. Kusro here. Ruby, you want to sing some more for us?
Well, I don't know. Let me check. Give me a minute.
Take all the time you want. Bless you, Rumi. I hope that's just like a cold regular.
No, it's very strange to hold this and sing, because
Actually, keep it down, Rumi. Don't worry about the angle because it's the voice we want to hear. No, like it's
okay.
clearly it's like it's coming in the way of your hands.
Okay, fine. Now it's better for me also.
Rumi, this is Aarti. Can I make one request?
Huh?
Can you sing some Thumri-esque thing?
Oh, okay.
You think that's possible?
Okay. Huh. Let me try.
It's so great in Bangalore, and it just feels to me like a Thumri-esque kind of mahal. That's why.
Okay.
That is correct, Arti. It's funny to hear that from a disembodied voice on screen, and so it feels like the voice of reason and the voice of the weather in Bangalore has come alive.
Only if possible, Rumi.
I'll try. I don't mind failing in front of you guys. No issues. I'll try.
Super. Thanks.
Okay, this is one of my favorite Thumri that I learned from Ramarao ji long ago, and was always wondering about the meaning in it. It is a very interesting thing. So I'll sing it for you people.
Thank you.
Yeah. ननदिया रे ननदिया रे ननदिया मारे मारी ननदिया रे ननदिया मारे मारे ननदिया मारे पान खायो मुख लाल भयो रे मुख लाल भयो रे ननदिया मारे पान खायो मुख लाल भयो रे मुख लाल भयो रे मार हे ननदिया मारी रसीली चमकीली ननदिया दरस बिना मोहे चैन नावे दरस बिना मोहे चैन नावे अब रैन नहीं निंदिया रे मार ननदिया मारी. That's it.
How can you say that's it? That was so beautiful. You can't sing like that and then say that's it. That is beautiful, Rumi. You want to tell us why you love that song so much?
So it's fine. It's very lesbian like. So the person who is singing, if you're calling somebody Nanand, must be the female relative, and she's trying to say that my Nanand is very beautiful. When she eats pan, her mouth becomes red. She is rasili and she's chamkili, and daras bina muhe na bhave. So without saying her, I can't live. Now I can't even sleep in the nights. So.
Oh, wow, so nice. This, like classical music, at least Indian classical music and classical adjacent music and bhakti and devotion and all that, it's so multi-sexual. It's not, it doesn't feel constrained the way we are in real life.
No, bhakti is just a mask for a lot of people to be decent. But really, this is so. If you look at Hindustani classical music, as far as I have learned from various different gurus and like try to understand the text and all that, after Drupad and Dhamar, in Drupad and Dhamar, they were like being very, very devotional and whatever. It was temple music and so on and so forth. Even then, for them, the Krishna Rasa Leela was crucially important. But once it came down to Khayal, which was brought by we don't know whether it was brought by Amir Khusro or Muhammad Shah Rangila. We don't know who it was, but something amazing happened. There was like a revolution where common people's life became part of classical music. So that's why it sounds amazing to have thumris like this and khayals which are very interesting, where there is another khayal in Rag Miyaki Todi, which actually goes on something like this, that 1 minute, yeah, 1 minute. दया बाट दू भर बई मैं का langurva bharanana det gagariya, which means hairi daya is like dayari daya, it's like an pukar, it's calling out someone, and then saying that, oh my god, I'm not able to cross this road because this monkey, this langur monkey is not letting me fetch a pot of water. And then it goes on to say that Bihan Tore Sang Kaise Jaun Sajni. Bihan is to go on a stroll. Tore Sang Kaise Jaun Sajni. How will I go with you, my girlfriend? Sajni, girlfriend. And Beach Me Thado Sadarang Uchakaya. Sadarang is the writer, and Sadarang is also the monkey. So this the Sadarang is like coming and jumping in front of me and not letting me meet you and to go on a stroll with you. So you know, the color around this composition and the seriousness around the raga is really strange, but people still sing and sing very happily also. I find it like a contradiction, but I am also like trying to find a middle way to sing. Every time I think of this composition, it's like, oh God. I mean, do people realize what they're singing types?
So, do you want to sing that then?
Okay. Mhm. Mm. He daya बाट दूं भरा भई मैं का लंगूरवा भरनन दे गगरिया दया बाट दूबा विहन तोरे संग कैसे जाऊं सजनी बीच में ठाड़ो सदा उछकया हे दया बाट दूभर.
Oh, that is so nice. In Carnatic music, Yankee Todi is called Todi only, and
What?
it's even
Carnatic
Carnatic
music?
music. It is a very serious and heavy raga. Miyaki Todi is called Todi, and it's a very heavy raga, much like this, like it's sung with like depth and seriousness. So when you're singing this, if you didn't tell me the story, I would have thought you were singing a song which would have been appropriate in mourning, And it's funny because like the words convey one layer of feeling, and the raga conveys another layer of feeling, and it's for the listener to process it as they wish. So it's very nice.
No, so I'd like
Rumi,
to tell
how
a
are you
bit.
feeling?
No, I'd like to tell a bit about this explanation of this whole mourning and this ragas association. Funnily,
that would be lovely.
So funnily, my guru who taught me, Ramrauji, used to always say that unfortunately, even ragas are stereotyped. That when senior national leaders die, they make sarangi persons play rag todi, and that's why it has become a morning raga. And somehow when it comes to the certain tones and microtones, we are always made to stereotype the happiness, the sorrow, the pathos and everything. So that's why we can't build the new nuances if we do not like struggle and come out of certain movements, certain chalan.
Mm.
So that is like a real challenge. And Todi is unfortunately like a thing that is, stereotyped in that manner.
That is so true. That is so true. Like now, for instance, that was the immediate conclusion that I reached as well, right? So
Mm.
everyone, it must be quite challenging to break your own association with it. If you don't listen to it like it's the first time you're listening to it, I think it's very hard to do. You're very right. Do you have any favorite ragas, Rumi? What are your
So
ragas?
I don't have any favorite ragas.
What is your favorite raga at this moment? What raga do
No, I don't have, because I've had a history of trauma with music, because my mother, like punished me by making me sing hours together every day, like 10 to 12 hours every day.
you?
Even during school, and whether we had school or not, I had to finish singing a certain hours of in my life, like 6 hours to 8 hours to 10 hours, and sometimes 12 hours and all that. So
Mm.
I've always hated music. I've never liked any raga. I like to listen to a lot of music, but somehow I have this love hate thing for it.
Mm.
Um, it's also like music is also very betraying. It sometimes, even after a lot of practice, it can betray you. Even after a lot of struggling hard with it,
Mm.
sometimes you might not just get images where you can sing well. And the whole question of what is singing well is also very dicey.
Yes. Mm.
So
For
I
instance,
don't have any favorites.
yeah, it makes sense. Like for instance, even
Yeah.
singing right now um, is in that sense it's a challenge, right? Like a good singing to you at this moment would be to do the best that you can with the resources that are available to you, with the knowledge that you've gathered, with
Mm.
where your voice is at, where your education is at, how you're feeling about the world and all of that. So
No, right now with t-shirts, what I'm realizing is that the dexterity of my voice is like receding. So I'm like struggling with it. And in my childhood, I had all the patience to sit and sing for hours together. Now I don't have, like after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I start feeling like, what fuck, why am I struggling like this? I'm
mm,
47. What
mm,
will I do singing? All unnecessary thoughts comes into the mind, but then I have to do. So I somehow practice an hour or two every day, but still that's not enough.
it's not. I mean, that's the thing. No, like I think when you're younger, you're forced into it. It's not great, but it has a lot of utility. Like you're forced to learn the first principles. You're forced to listen to
Mm.
notes carefully, uh, almost because you don't have an option. Otherwise, you can't do anything else, and that changes your relationship with music. For me, for instance, for a few years, I was very scared to sing. I didn't feel like singing, even
Mm.
though I was learning for many years, and it was just I like I it always felt like someone was going to pounce on me and ask me to sing, and I didn't want to do that. Like my
No,
own.
and the worst thing is, you know what? The worst thing is that the moment you're a musician,
Mm,
people think that you are like a radio, that you switch on the knob and then you end up singing, vomiting music out like a machine. Whatever you have to vomit out. If you don't, and if you don't, and suppose you're not in a mood and you're not up to the mark, they'll judge and decide that, oh, this person doesn't sing well.
it's okay. What can I say? It's a bad situation, but it's okay. I mean, at least we discovered music, no? So I think that's the ultimate victory in all of this. Rumi, would you like to sing some more for us? Do you want to just like chat and hang out?
Maybe I'll just sing one more,
Oh, please, how much ever you like.
because my voice is again going dry. Give me a minute, okay?
Take all the time that you want. There's no problem. Arvind, Aarti, Dipankar, we see you. We could hear you as well. How are you? How are you all doing? Okay.
I'm all right. I'm just my mother is sort of logging into a another webinar. So, and we're sharing an internet connection. So I'm trying to just change my location so that you don't catch her voice, in the middle of this.
Problems. Oh, okay. Rumi is back.
Yes.
Oh, with beautiful, with like a part to notebook, music book as it is known, which has clearly been opened and closed many times.
This is a strange book that I found in an RSS office.
What
No,
very apt.
it's funnily called Bhajan Sangrah, but it has some. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. You were saying it has some real.
No, it has some really interesting compositions by people like Kare Khan, Ray Das, Malik Das, and then Guru Nanak, Darya Sahab. Several interesting people, and I'm going to sing one from Mansoor now.
Beautiful. From a book that you picked up from an RSS office, which is bizarre and funny.
Yeah, but RSS office also has a story which I have to tell. Like years ago, I had a teacher who was like, I didn't know that he was linked to RSS. And then on a Guru Purnima day, they asked me to sing, and I didn't realize that it was RSS, some Sanskritic Bharti or something like that. So I practiced whatever my guru had taught, and then went there, and then realized that this was RSS cultural wing, and then immediately changed all my compositions and ragas and everything, and then ended up singing all Sufi. So they were so upset with me that they didn't even give me vote of thanks. They didn't give me money. They didn't even put garland to me. Nothing.
That's very funny. This is, see, I like this kind of sneaky revolution. We need like guerrilla revolution. This is the style we need. Go for it, Rumi. Like, we'd love to hear you sing some more.
Narada अगर है शौक मिलने का तो हर दम लो लगाता जा अगर है शौक मिलने का तो हर दम लो लगाता जा जलाकर खुद नुमाई को भस्म तन पर लगाता जा अगर है शौक मुसल्ला फाड़ तस्बीहा तोड़ किताबें डाल पानी में मुसल्ला फाड़ तस्बीहा तोड़ किताबें डाल पानी में पकड़ तू दाश्त फिरिश्तों का गुलाम उनका कहता जा अगर है शौक न मर भूको न रख रोजा न जा मस्जिद न कर सिजदा न मर भूको न रख रोजा, न जा मस्जिद न कर सिजदा, वजू का तोड़ दे कूजा, वजू का तोड़ दे कूजा, शराब शौक पीता जा, अगर है शौक। न हो मुल्ला न हो ब्राह्मण, दुई का छोड़ कर पूजा, हुक्म है शाह खलंदर का, हुक्म है शाह खलंदर का, अनलक तू कहाता जा। कहे मंसूर मस्ताना, मैंने दिल हक में पहचाना, सॉरी, मैंने हक दिल में पहचाना, वही मस्तों का मैं खाना, वही मस्तों का मैं खाना, उसी के बीच जा, अगर है शौक मिलने का, तो हर दम लो लगाता जा। My voice is not working anymore.
Rumi, you're a superstar. I mean, that was so brave of you, and to like persist with it and like sing anyway, work through what your voice is going through. Hats off. I mean, like, thank you so much for singing for us, and despite the difficulties of doing so, it was very very nice of you. Reward, can you say some more about this RSS party of yours? What
No,
else
not my
happened
party.
that evening?
No, so basically, this teacher of mine was a close friend of another teacher, and then they happened to they wanted some student to sing for Guru Purnima, and then I didn't know about the background of RSS cultural wing organizing it, so I went there. And even while I was practicing, these people kept on talking about RSS, that this Hinduism and so on and so forth. So I started wondering what is happening. And then I asked them. And that's when they said, no, this is actually being organized by RSS, cultural wing. And then I like got really shocked. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? First I thought whether I should sing or not. And if I don't sing, then it'll be an insult to my guru. Then I decided, yes, this is the
Yeah.
time I should just sing for all my gurus. So it was around 2003 or something. It so happened that in the Gujarat riots 2002, the mazar of Ustad Fayaz Khan was like demolished, and then nobody ever even spoke a word. No musician spoke a word. So, except for Shubha Mudgal. So I kind of decided that evening I'm going to dedicate everything to him, and then also sing Kavali for him. And so I sang that Kavali for him. I won Kavali for him. Uh, so after I finished, of course, nobody spoke to me. I mean, even the audience didn't bother to speak to me. So like that.
It's okay, Rumi.
There were two people in the audience. One was my friend. There were two friends in the audience. One was Nitin Manayat and another friend, dear friend Sharda BN. Both of them came and spoke to me. The rest of them didn't. And I just went back. That's it.
That's okay. That's and this when I think about other musicians, especially classical musicians, and the politics of it in India, you notice that most people are not comfortable speaking about these things in public, right? I think their fear is almost that they won't be able to practice their art anymore. You do see some people who share their political opinions, obviously, like Ranjini and Gayatri, for instance, in Carnatic music, or T.M. Krishna on opposite ends of the spectrum. But I think others are just scared about losing the opportunity to sing, because either way they receive hate and distrust from somewhere or the other. So that comes in the way of the enjoyment of the art. So for you to like persist with it anyway is brave, but it's also, I would say, it's abnormal. It's a little exceptional. It's not what other people might do.
No, I actually, I'll tell you the story. So my thing is that, I realized that I was I didn't know the word homosexual, but I realized that I was in love with women, and then at a very young age, and then I was not able to express it in front of anybody, and when these things were happening, and then later growing up after 22, 23, 24, when the marriage pressure started, I said, no, I will not get married at all. When I was 27 years or 26 years, my guru Ramarauji, he passed away. After that, I started learning from another well-known artist, and they actually refused to teach me because I insisted that I won't get married. I don't want to settle down. I told them very clearly that I don't want to get married. I don't want to have children, because they said, now it's time. You should just get married, have two children, and then continue music. I'm like, what fuck? I'm not going to get married. I don't want to marry. What are you trying to tell me? I mean, like, then they said, no, sorry, we can't teach you. I'm like, what are you trying to say? How was that anything to do with music? So for almost
Yeah.
like, this was my articulations. And then when I actually started being part of, queer organizations and trans organizations and so on and so forth, people started this whole rumor around in the music circles that I've stopped singing and that I'm going around with trans people. So, and also that was also the time that I started changing my dress. I stopped wearing saris for concerts, which you are expected to, and wear a big bindi and lots of flowers and long hair, and plait it properly and look like traditional woman. I
Hmm.
used to wear pant shirts or pajama kurta, or things like that. And then, in fact, in one of the senior IAS person, actually, after singing a concert in memory of Gangubai Handel in Alliance Ramsey, he actually said the concert would have been much better had you worn a sari. I'm like,
Hmm.
what? So slowly, people started moving me away from those spaces because I was associating myself, or people. I don't know what the whole deal is. Why, especially when I joined this queer and trans organization, started working on crisis intervention. It's not like I stopped practicing, or it's not like I stopped learning. In between, I still went and learned. But of course, that person who did not teach me, but there were other people who taught me. So I went to other people who to learn. So I've also done this leave, join in between. But slowly I was weaned away from this whole classical music circles totally. I'm like, now I don't get at all, especially after I kind of said I'm trans and I'm like this, I want to do this. People talk to me very rarely. They don't even talk to me properly.
Uh, I mean, that's so cruel. Why should your capacity to either learn or enjoy music be dependent on what you wear or how you look or anything? It's like it's nobody's business to dictate how you should enjoy music, how you should learn music. That's a deeply personal relationship that you have with yourself, you have with music, and yeah, the guru who would accept you. So I'm very sorry that you've had to face this kind of cruelty. This is not the kind of society that I want to live in, for sure. And like clearly you don't
No, I
either.
don't go
So
to
more
concerts
power to you
anymore.
that you didn't stop singing. Yeah. But you do
Again, I
sing,
don't
you
get.
sing a lot.
No, I don't sing a lot. I mean, I practice at home, and now thankfully I just came to know that my teacher is going to shift from Mysore to Bangalore, which means
Mm,
3 months down the line I can start learning from him again. That's the
mm.
biggest boon for me right now. Apart from that, no, I don't get concerts. I even if I maximum 2 or 3 concerts in a year.
What nonsense. Look, let's do one concert in a week, every week. And just We'll have our own concerts. Why do we need to wait for anyone to enjoy our singing? I don't think it's like we would want to what I like about right now, Nurmi, is that even putting together something like this, we have YouTube. It's free. Anyone can use it. So you don't have to wait for anyone. And there might be one person watching it or 50, 100,000 people watching it, but the pleasure of singing music is the same. So for the creator, so if we can enjoy it, we can create a nice spirit around it. I think we should just do our own thing and ignore the organizers. So, Rumi, then when do you get to sing? When do you? I know the last time I heard you sing was about 2-3 years ago at ALF, and you were doing a series of performances of I think Rumi and Kavalis. It was a theme. There was a theme to that evening, and I remember hearing you sing, and so evocative and so beautiful. So it's a really the world's lost that they don't get to hear it.
Yeah.
But who do you get to who likes hosting you, and how do we get more people to do that? Would you like to
Ah,
sing if we had more of these?
now, no. Now I'm going through a transition, so I don't think I can give myself the best because there is a lot of glitches in my voice, and then I need to practice, fix my pitch. I'm like everything I'm
Mm,
singing is in different pitches. So once
mm,
it becomes stable, yes, I would like to come back. Maybe I'm actually thinking of launching myself within the next 2 years,
mm,
properly practice and then look at this changing voice and everything. It's not easy. So I'm trained to hear my own voice, and there is an image to that voice. Now that started changing. So now
mm,
I feel that I can't sing too high at all. It doesn't. If I sing too high, I start cracking up and I get cough. But the
mm,
more low I'm practicing, the more clearer my voice is becoming. But
mm,
the strain is too fast. I mean,
mm,
the voice shouldn't get strained like that. So that's what I'm like figuring out why it's happening like that, and give more rest and sing type of thing I'm trying to do. So I need some at least a year's time to fix it.
mm. It'll happen to me. There's no hurry, and I think that's the benefit of training, right? You get to notice how your voice is feeling, what it's sounding like. So you learn much quicker and adjust much quicker than you would if you were starting and if you were so what the ideal is. So you can just do whatever is necessary, the really hard work necessary to be more like that. But Rumi, I have one question. You recommend studying Drupad as a way of exploring your lower voice. I also know it's very hard, and it's hard on your throat, it's hard on your body. Can you tell us a little more about Drupad? Actually, I don't know anything about Hindustani music, and I just know few phrases here and there. Uh, what are the different styles? What are all these karanas and all that?
I'm not a fan of Drupad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, literally, the style of singing also is somehow it there is more rigidity towards tala, raga, expression, singing, everything. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a devotional, and somehow I feel very colorless about Drupad. I mean, it's my personal opinion. I don't hold anybody this thing for it. So that way, voice can
You
get
like?
deeper. Huh?
Mhm. Sorry. Voice can get.
That way voice can get deeper, and with khayal and thumris also, not necessarily Drupad. So basically this is all around gender is what I feel like. Drupad, most of the people who perform Drupad were men. One or two
Mm,
women prefer perform. Now these days it's become a style to learn Drupad, but I really don't see the idea of what speciality does it have. It's a different orientation to think of Drupad.
mm, mm,
It's a
mm,
different orientation to
mm,
think of Khayal. Khayal is more open. Khayal is um, I really like the way it brings the everyday life in front of us, and you can do whatever you want with khayal. There is freedom. And because at one point of time I even made an attempt to sing Sufi shares in poetry in khayal. Because so if you think of what khayal means, khayal is a thought. So how do you develop a thought? So you have your complete freedom to develop a thought from beginning to end, however you want to do within that raga, whether you want to start somewhere at the end or somewhere from the beginnings. And so there is no beginning, no end, and you can explore it the way you want to. So you construct the way you want to, like it's like writing a paper, or it's like writing a book, or it's like constructing a house, or it's like writing or sketching a diagram. You can actually see in the whole form of khayal. And the text really helps you to explore. um, and that's very amazing. Like, I'll just sing this thing for you now. It compels me to do it.
Thank
So
you, Rumi.
basic uh,
Everything.
so if you change the text, khayal is something like this. You can actually even explore this text also. Ba 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 ba, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 bags full. Ba 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 ba, black sheep. One for my master, one for the dame, one for the little boy who lives down the lane. Ba 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 ba, black sheep. Ba 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 ba, black sheep. Ba 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 ba, black sheep. Have you any wool? Have you any wool? Have you any wool? Have you any wool? Ba 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 ba, black sheep. Like this.
Also not surprising at all, right? This is, I mean, you can do anything with any words in any language, in any context, in any mood. There's a certain freedom. I think I'm sensing the what you meant when you said there's freedom, because Drupad, I think, reminds me a lot of Carnatic music in form. It's like it's form based, it's technical. The freedom is within a structure. There is a lot of freedom, but
Yeah.
it's within a bound form, right? So it's not to say there's no freedom. And this Kaya seems to be like, yeah, just do what you feel like doing and seek your way around it. What is a tumri? What is the difference between a Kaya and a tumri?
So that there's shitloads of gender around music. So basically, what happens is that around 400, 500 or 600 years ago, or Wajid Ali Shah's time, there's this new form that emerges, which women are supposed to perform to entertain men. So
Mm,
pining, poetry, and so on. But it cannot replace Khayal or Drupad, because men sing Khayal and Drupad. So Khayal and Drupad can be anything, mostly devotional or whatever. But this particular Thumri, so is something that women sang to entertain men.
mm,
Slowly, at one point of time, in fact, a lot of men have even said, one Drupadi actually said that I'm quite tempted to sing Thumri, but then it means below dignity. So when women sang, suddenly Thumri becomes semi-classical. Now, how is it semi-classical, or I really don't understand. And if you look at people who have sung Thumris and who lived their life singing such amazing music, there's nothing to compare also. Like somebody like Begum Akhtar, Siddheshwari Devi, then Zohrabai Agrawali, or anybody for that matter. And so then it became a type of a clan that started singing thumris, which were associated with tawaifs. And there was also this very interesting thing. So the one who sings for the temple is Devdasi. The one who sings for Rajas and Maharajas and Zamindars and all of them are Rajadasi. And the one who entertains general common public is Alankaradasi. So you have grades in the entertainment level also, and those grades would fix the purity of your music. So the whole question of purity, devotion, God, everything is associated with gender. So all good things are with Drupad and Dhamar. Thumri and the other composition structures like Dadra or Hori or Chaiti or whatever, all these evolved around the everyday life of people. You can even call folk, or which people took from everyday life. Like for example, Chaiti means those are songs which are sung during or based on the associations, poetic associations of coloring your cloth. And it's a very important season of the year where there are winds and you color your clothes and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting. So suddenly all these are feminized, and then this so the thumri had to be the body of the woman, and she had to yearn, she had to pine for the man, she had to sing it in that way. And but unfortunately, or whatever it is, like all these people broke all those norms, and then went way beyond all the gender norms that was constructed. So I think it was an amazing revolution if you think of Thuri as a composition structure. Because if you heard Siddheshwari Devi, there is nothing called as male or female voice. And then if you heard the Begum Akhtar, what gender can you associate? And so that was something that women actually broke and went ahead.
Right. I mean, okay. So, what's also interesting about this is that make norms, you can take norms. And good time for us to shift into the second portion of the evening. Aarti, Dipankar, Arvind, can I invite you to unmute yourself, make yourself visible, turn on videos, the way you do. And I'm going to ask all of you to do this. And yeah, so it's
no.
Arvind, as usual, we can hear you giggling.
Yes, here I am.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Hi guys, hello. Hi,
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, to have you here. This let Aarti also come along, and in the meantime, I will quickly reintroduce this exercise. So this is episode 11 officially and episode 12 unofficially of Lawyers, Artists, and Others Talk Law, Love, and Equity. It's a broadcast media which is inspired by love for beauty and love for wisdom. So in the first hour, we usually feature some art or science or workshop of some sort. And in the second hour, a second hour and a half, we spend some time conversing on matters of like civic importance, which means it's conversations associated with how we live with ourselves, each other. And I like extending it to think about living with nature, and thinking about what technology is doing to these things and all of those aspects. So these conversations are meant to be public media. We have a state channel. Doordarshan is a state channel. It's not really public media, so to say. And we noticed that the cost of putting this together is actually barely anything. So we wanted to use this as a sort of transactional platform where people such as yourselves who are tuning in can contribute whatever they like towards three important causes. So there's a series of fundraisers as well. The three causes we've identified right now are first, social security for migrant workers who are really suffering. And we have put them in a position that no human should ever face. We're talking about food security for urban poor, again, the strangers who make our lives possible, and protective gear for essential care workers. And that includes kirana shop owners, barber shops, house helps, everyone, because whether we acknowledge it or not, India is on its way towards community transmission. There's a rapid spread of this virus, and we really need to like look out for each other and do what we can about it, you know. And so we like to think of it as opening your wallet as a way of communicating how open your hearts are feeling. Yeah. So we invite you to participate in this. We leave the link to the fundraiser. All these like serious people are laughing at me a little bit, and that is understandable because they actually do the work, and people such as myself are just here to talk. So it's lovely to have you all here. Rumi is a trans activist. Arvind is a researcher who has probably read most books that will ever be written by humanity. Uh, and Aarti is an advocate, and she's a superstar. She works with cases that nobody else would take, and literally every act that she undertakes seems to be in the direction of justice and increasing what it's like in the world. Dipankar is the fullest manifestation of freedom, if I understand it, in this like multi-sexual, multi-gendered, universal being. And I think all of us are on the path to be a little more like Dipankar every day, and that would be a good victory. So it's lovely to have all of you here, old friends and new friends. We just enjoyed 1 hour of Rumi conversing with us, sharing his music with us. It was such a blessing, and I already feel like the stories that are going to come out of this evening, thoughts and feelings and all of that that's going to come out of this evening is made wonderful. Whether these viewers are going to enjoy it or not, I feel a lot of giggles and a lot of sighs going around this Zoom. And now we have to say going around the Zoom instead of going around the room. But sorry, I try to make all puns that I can as much as I can. So it's lovely to have you all here. We're going to do a round of introductions, but we're going to start by asking you not about your work. We have enough and more time to talk about it. Not about your life. We have enough and more time to talk about it. But we'll ask you about your soul instead. So the question to all of you is, how would you describe yourself without talking about what you do or where you're from? You know, too often our roles in society are defined by our roles, which is lame, and we lead rich lives with many choices that we make constantly. So tell us about your dreams, your aspirations, your hopes, your sports, whatever else you want. Just don't tell us what you do. We have enough time to talk about it. And Arvind, being our general manager, we will begin with you, Arvind, on this question.
Oh, just I think one of the joys which not discovered, we're putting it strongly, but rediscovered is the joys of Cubbon Park. You know, you just go there every day for a run. It's the most beautiful. It's a beautiful park, and I just feel that sometimes friends make fun of me and say, "Oh, you've gone all the way to Central Park," and the other, you come back and say, "Cubbon Park is the best." But yeah, it's fantastic. What a fantastic resource in the heart of the city. It's really, really beautiful. Now that's running in Cubbon Park is something which maybe you don't know about me, but I'm sure a lot of people know actually. So it's nothing, not a secret.
Arvind, a lot of people know because you're a famous man with famous choices that determine the shape of our life. So obviously, there's lots of this. Thanks, Arvind. Arti,
Sorry, I sort of lost you there, Badri. Did you?
I can hear myself echo in one of the systems. I'm not sure which one it is. The black sheep will eventually tell. But Arti, I was just asking you to introduce yourself without talking about what you do or where you're from.
I think actually what this sort of enforced, period of silence and isolation from friends is strangely, I find that I've had to sort of rediscover what it means to be a daughter and a granddaughter. My mum and my grandmom. My mum is about 72. My grandmom just turned 93 yesterday. And I've actually been living with them for this since about mid-March. And mid-March to now has been about 3 months. And I think we've all had to sort of recalibrate what it means to have three generations of women living under one roof. It's also required me to learn to cook. I mean, I've always been a fairly decent cook, but I've not been a cook who can sort of whip up very traditional Tamilian cuisine, which is what my grandmom prefers to eat. So actually, the last few months have been about sort of rediscovering those aspects of a relationship with them, and also sharing a space that one can't get out of very easily. You can't just, you could not for a while just leave whenever it is that you wanted. So I think right now, if you were to ask me at this point of time, I'd say that it's been about sort of refiguring that relationship out, and sort of rebuilding a certain connection with them, primarily through food, but also with sort of what their day is like, and pretty much how it is that you engage with family from whom you have lived away from for a long period, a relatively long period of time. So I think that is what I'd say I'm sort of grappling with right now. Yeah.
One of the 10,000 things that I imagine you're grappling with.
Not really. No, I must make this sort of confession very, very quickly. I've done sporadic amounts of work during this, but I've certainly not been this. I've not done any of the heavy lifting that some of my extraordinary former colleagues and friends like Clifton and Maitri and Lekha and so on have been doing. I've done some bits of bail work, some sort of writs of termination of pregnancy for minor rape victims who are pregnant and need an order of termination of pregnancy. But I have to confess that the heavy lifting is on what has been going on, with the madness of the kind of impoverishment I've actually not been in that fray at all. But yeah.
I mean, I think in certain ways we're all on the spectrum. On this show, we like saying your vibes are more important than money, and your thoughtfulness and your kindness is more important. So I think in a certain way we're always aspiring to be more of that in our lives, And I don't invalidate like Lekha, Clifton, or Michael's work at all. And these people are superstars and making like humanity possible when it seems very, very difficult for us to hold on to it, right? So, but I like, in a certain way, this is also a very personal journey. And I think that's what you're reminding us, Aarti, which is that Dipankar and I have spoken about this. So perhaps he could go next and tell us how he talk about himself without talking about what he does, where he's from.
Sure. I mean, just to begin, I think for me, so I actually moved back home to where my parents stay and where my brother stays in January. So just before, all of this happened, and actually I'm between jobs in that sense right now. And for me also, actually, somewhere in the beginning of the lockdown, I was like, okay, this is going to be some intense family time. And obviously a lot of our wounds, whether they're, personal or collective, are very intertwined with our families and with how we were raised and the relationships we have with our family members. So I was like, okay, this is going to be some time to like work on that stuff, and hopefully it'll be good. Like if one is actively engaging with it. So that's kind of how am also grappling with all of that. yeah, like I mean, working in the arts, and I think it's very important that for us also to keep remembering that the personal and the one-on-one and the domestic and whatever it is are as important as the political, and the collective and the bigger, and things ripple out and things are connected. So uh, I've kind of been telling myself that too. And I think in terms of who I am, or what I'm interested in, I think I am interested in kind of understanding what the is going on, um, and what's been going on. And I think that's an inquiry that most artists have, and activists, and people who are working with any kind of public or private things. So yeah, and at the moment just trying to stay present, I guess. And in terms of joy, small joys, yeah, back to basics, being grateful while doing whatever you're doing.
That's
I
fine.
know
I
that.
think that's a really good answer, Dipankar, because it adds a layer of humanity to Aarti's answer. Because when Aarti spoke, I got the sense that she felt like she could do more, and she was suggesting that we all can do more. But it's also useful to remember that there is the element of the personal and the living of your life, of your private life, in a way that is consistent with your sense of integrity. Is just as political as an outward act, So there's a certain sense of continuity between what you do, say, feel, think, and maybe it manifests just locally around you. Maybe it manifests universally, and I suppose that's fine. Rumi, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. The question that we're asking everyone is how will you talk about yourself without talking about what you do or where you're from?
I can't speak without work. Work for me is me. Otherwise, there's no me. My identification, myself, everything comes from things I do. So I don't know how I can say what I am. I don't know. One thing is, I love being with friends, and so somehow I cannot fathom with the family structure. So I kind of relocated myself to friend circles and created more friend circles, trying to living with them. Last 20 years, this has been my experiments, and then also the relationships keep changing. I mean, some relationships are like this that, like for example, Sunil and I are such serious, thick friends that I don't think, I mean, whatever the relationship angles to it keeps changing. It's just us that pulls back us together. And, that's what, like, that's how Kannan and Sonu and all my friends, Rohan, etc., 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 a lot of friends make me realize who I am. And that's where I'd like to be. Unlike the family, which has always tried to define me in terms of, you have to be like this, you have to be like that, you have to get married, you have to be that, this, everything. And then, but friends somehow have given me that sense of me. And yeah, if you want me to cut out the work part, then friends is where I feel I'm alive. And with friends, there's a lot of work associated, friendships, and that's where I feel I'm more comfortable with. So I don't have any more explanations than this.
You gave one like huge explanation, and then you're like, I don't have any more explanation, because what you essentially described is how you reinvent your family through your relationships in adulthood by choosing who you want to admit into your family, right? And if you think about the family as the people who enable your freedom, then why are friends? Friends obviously are the ones who make you for what you are, and you're constantly working on your relationship with your family as well, and that's I suppose that makes sense. It's not surprising. So let's move into the more substantive parts of our conversation. Now, feel free to talk about anything. There are no
Can I say one more
restrictions.
thing actually that I was meaning to
50
say?
more things. You can say 50 more things, Dipankar.
Okay. Actually, because I think it might be connected to the general conversation, but actually something that I am discovering now is that, like for myself, and it feels great, is that actually I don't need to have figured out who I am, you know. And I think for the longest time, I think we're hurried into figuring that out, whether it's professionally, personally, gender, whatever, you know, whatever you want to call it. So in that sense, you know, that's kind of where I am right now.
That's a great thought, and it's a great segue into the most substantive aspect of
James had one, can I add one thought as well?
You can have many thoughts too, Arvind.
One-
What I'm really looking forward to in this panel is all of you are super articulate. I am actually going to just sit back and let you guys do whatever you want and say whatever you want. I'm not going to ask you any questions. So Arvind, feel free to
Yeah.
say whatever you like.
In a sense, the literary invocation which happened was Aarti's invocation of living in a house with 3 generations of women, right? And 3 generations of a family. And what did that mean? Kind of? I was thinking, does anybody can think of a work of fiction which parallels that sensibility of what does it mean to live in a house with 3 generations of women? One specific question I had just to anybody else who might think on those lines. The other thought I had is the other very insightful thing which she said is we express our love for each other. I don't think she used the word love. We express our feelings for each other through the food that we cook for each other, right? Or how we cook, what we cook for each other. And that again, of course, links up to I think Sunil's wonderful beef curry and how he expresses his love. The wonderful beef curry he makes all the time for all of us, you know. And I was thinking of this also in the context of, you know, this. I think a friend of mine, I think I won't mention the name, but Aarti will know who the friend is. Recently, there's a bit of a tragedy in his house, and his father kind of passed away, and he was not in the country. He was in another country, right? And so he couldn't come at this very, very crucial moment and be there with his mother, which he really wanted to be. And obviously, very emotional time, and is being in touch with the mother a lot. And his thing is, you know, I speak to her, I ask her, "How are you doing?" And she says, "Fine." I said, "What do I do after that?" Then we're like, "You moron. Who talks to their mother, asks them, how are you doing?" That's not the way you Indian mothers conduct conversation with their kids. You ask them, "Uta ayata, uta hengittu, uta yen madidya." That's the question you need to have. It's a conversation structure on food. You never say love in the direct sense. It's always the indirection, the subtlety, and different kind of communication. One last point I'll make is during the lockdown, what also came to me was I was reading this. Rumi, don't laugh. I was reading this. ಕುವೆಂಪು ಕಾನೂನು ಹೆಗ್ಗಡತಿ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಎಷ್ಟು ಫ್ಯಾಂಟಾಸ್ಟಿಕ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ತರ ಈ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಯಾವ ತರ ಸಂಬಂಧಗಳು ಇವೆ ಅಂತ, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ವರ್ಣಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. The mother-son relationship is described like that. You know, it's like this. It's like a routine. Come have your coffee. Let's do this. What are you eating, drinking? That's it. You know? And he derives out of that description. He gets a sense of, you know, what that relationship means. And it's quite beautiful because, I mean, it reminds me that we don't have this American culture. Love you, dad, love you, mom. That's not the way things work in this. I mean, at least, I mean, in many families, I imagine, right? So you have to think of a different way in which this gets expressed. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Can I kind of add to what little during the lockdown, one funny thing that happened in our house. So Sunil and I share the house now, and during the lockdown, of course, cigarettes and booze was like totally zero, nothing. And then when they lifted the lockdown on booze that day, for very funnily, many of us came together into the house, like Kannan and Rohan and a few others. And then we all decided that if we go in large numbers, then we'll be able to buy more booze and then come have like a small. It wasn't a party moment, but then somehow we thought like we all have gone through severe things, and then we should be able to buy at least two drinks. And then we went to the store, and then Sunil had also come. The store owner suddenly calls Sunil from out of the queue and says, "You people, whatever you want, you come and buy from this side." And we were like, what happened suddenly? Why are they calling us separately and all that? And that store owner, so sensitive, quickly told Sunil, saying, "I don't want you guys to undergo harassment standing in the queue because I know you people are trans harassments. So just go from this side and buy. I will see to it that you will not be harassed.
It's
That's
so
the care, that interacting in and around in the living area where we are, and about being what we are, is like generating some of very positive support and care like this. It was amazing and touching. It was
mm,
amazing. Like, it was four of us who were standing in the queue were like called separately out, and then we just went directly and they gave us drink, and then we bought whatever we wanted, and then we came home and we were feeling, my God, what is this amazing? Like, after that we said, okay, fine, this is great. Yeah, I just wanted to share that feeling.
Thank you for sharing that, Aarti. I think Arvind's question called upon you, but I just want to say one thing. Arvind, my mom is going to be so happy hearing this. She's definitely tuned into this right now, because she says, I have to say, "Uta aita, uta madidya, madbeka." What is going on? It's like it is the best and simplest and such a wonderful way of like acknowledging your existence and your continued thriving in the world, which is another, like, which is a long way of saying that is love, right? Like, it's straight down the gullet, and it makes perfect sense. So this the experience that you just shared with us, Rumi, was so nice. I felt like happy about humanity for a moment. It's very easy and very hard to feel that way, but like, these small acts of kindness are what matter, right? It's not like this big grand statue that you build for whatever it is and whoever it is. But yeah, if you're putting up statue, you should put up statue of like ideas or sculptures or like beautiful things or nature and things like that, but not really of people. But the simple acts of kindness, everyday kindness, I mean, it feels great, and I'm so happy that you got to enjoy it, because it's not like all of your interactions with our society have been kind, to say the least.
Yeah.
That someone would and make life slightly easier, it's so nice. It's such a nice thing to that we're able to remember that aspect of humanity. I see 3 generations of women. How amazing is that? What is that like? And this question about food, both of them are interesting, because you did make the point earlier about wanting to cook like Tamil cuisine, or having to cook Tamil cuisine, but not being sure what you have to. And you, of course, have your own manner of cooking and your eating habits and your working habits. Can I just say, you look more rested than I've ever seen you in my life, at least. And
I think all of us look
it's a nice.
incredibly rested, no? I mean, aren't we all like? I don't know though. I'm not sure. I've had like fairly early mornings, and because I want to sort of get this get the work of the cooking out of the way um, before I sort of go and do things that I think are more important. That was initially my sort of attitude towards it, saying I just need to get up. I need to like make sure that there's food on the table for lunch and dinner, and I'm done, and that's it. But I think over the last few weeks, it sort of evolved into something quite different. I actually go through a fair amount of thinking and planning on what it is that will keep these 2 older women at home healthier, which is not something that I initially started out with. So there is a certain amount of time that is set aside every evening to know what I will do the next day, and I sort of keep in mind that they are both I mean, my mom has gone back to work, but she still has just works half the day. My grandmom is completely at home, but they do need to keep certain standards of nutrition up and so on, because they are in that vulnerable population, and so on. So I have my attitude towards this entire exercise has definitely changed. But I'd actually like to ask Arvind. He flagged off a couple of things, and I'm curious. I actually was racking my brain just now to think of, have I read anything at all about generations of women, and the sort of challenges they face, and nothing seems to be coming to my mind. Seem to have read stuff about women in certain generations and around their times, right? but I can't seem to think of anything that is written cross-sectionally. I mean, across time. I mean, why is that? Like, why am I not?
I was thinking the same thing as I was asking you. There's a Lorca play.
Right.
Blood Wedding. I think that's it. It's
Sorry, what wedding?
Lorca. I think it's called Blood Wedding.
Okay.
I think that's the one of the 3 generations of women, living in the same house.
Right.
I can think of, but it's a great question. We should just go back and see where else can you find this,
No, sort of. I was kind of simultaneously Googling it, as you were saying. What is this literature? And I sort of couldn't. I couldn't sort of find anything, but I think there has to be. I mean, I can't imagine that there isn't. But nothing in India is coming to my mind.
Yeah, like, the generations are in a sense of families that we have lots of them, right? The same thing. The Kanuru Hegediti is generations. That's right. Generational shift kind of a thing. Right. And I guess 100 years of solitude. Again, that's generation.
Correct.
You see the interaction between the various
members.
But is there something which pulls out only the relationship between women from various generations?
Right.
That's the question to ask. I don't have an answer, but I think this is worth thinking about.
Absolutely. I mean,
Arvind's unstated point is that you should write that book right now. That is the.
I mean, like, frankly, if I could write stuff like that, etc., I doubt very much I'd be a litigating lawyer. I mean, I would doubt that very much. I mean,
listen, I don't think that's fair at all, Aarti. If you can't feel those things, you can't be a litigating lawyer. So writing it is the way.
Sorry, getting back to Aarti's point in the book. Sorry, I'm stuck like a record, to that particular point. Is perhaps Shashi Tharoor might be not Shashi Tharoor, Shashi Deshpande, right? Or Vaidehi. They might be people to look at, to see if they capture that dimension.
Difficult daughters. I think that is the Shashi. Yes.
Difficult Daughters is by Shashi Deshpande, is it? Is that what we'll leave the link up here for anyone who wants to take.
Yeah.
And you made a very brave and valiant attempt at Shuddha Kannada, and that is hats off to you.
Who are you telling
for attempting it? I'm telling you this. Anyway, I will read in my manners.
Arvind's Kannada.
I'm sure it's better than mine, though. But
for me,
just say that.
What?
If you're making fun of Arvind's Kannada, what will you say about mine?
No, see, everybody will have their own Kannada. I'm not making fun of. I'm making fun of Arvind's Kannada because he's trying to speak. What is it? Our hesre, that Kannada writer person. Shiv Sundar Kannada ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅವನು ಅದಕ್ಕೇನೆ I'm making fun of him. He doesn't speak normal Kannada. He speaks Shiv Sundar Kannada.
Shiv Sundar Kannada ಏನಂತೆ ಅವರು ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಭಾಷೆ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ.
ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ ಯಾರ್ ಭಾಷೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾವನ್ಗಾದ್ರೂ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ?
That's great.
Okay,
guys, the one who told me this said that all this is fine, but it's very great effort, no? But let me tell you, nobody understood what you said. I said that's a great point. I gotta ensure people at least understand what I'm saying.
Arvind, to be fair, most people don't understand what you're saying, or even me for that matter, even when we speak in English. So I don't think so
don't exaggerate.
I'm just saying it as it is. Today is a conversation about truth. Can we move in the direction of why we gather? We don't have to, but may I suggest? As the dictator of this conversation. Henceforth, our posters are going to say dictator. But anyway, okay. So the question that I have to ask to all of you is, what does coming out mean to you? And I'm saying this as just an open-ended question. When I say coming out, what comes to mind? What comes to mind in the context of yourself as an idea? You can say whatever you want. There are no limits to what you could possibly say, at least not on account of us. And let's start with Rumi, because Rumi, in the morning I said, can we talk about this? He said, Idala yen matadake, meaning like, what is there to talk about all this? There is no such thing as coming out because it's a matter of being. And I was like, Rumi, don't tell me anymore. We have an entire evening to talk about this. So why don't we start with you? What when I say coming out, what comes to mind? What do you think about?
ಅಯ್ಯೋ ಇಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಕಮಿಂಗ್ ಔಟ್ ನ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಇವೆಂಟ್ ತರ ಲೈಫ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ವಿಚ್ ಇಸ್ ಮೇನ್ಲಿ ಫಾರ್ ಸಮ್ ಸೆಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೀಪಲ್. ಬಟ್ ನಾನ್ ನೋಡಿರೋದು, ಈಗ ನನ್ಗೆ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದು ಫಮಿಲಾ, ಮನೋಹರ್, ನಿತಿನ್, ಅವರು ಇವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಅದೇ ತರ ಅರವಿಂದ್ ನೋಡಿದೆ. ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು ಇವ್ರು ನಂಗೆ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅನ್ನೋದ್ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ, ಕಮ್ಮಿಂಗ್ ಔಟ್ ಅಂತ ಒಬ್ರು ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ಆಗಿ ನನ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಫನಿ ಅನ್ಸಿದ್ದು ಏನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ತುಂಬಾ ಹಿಂದೆ ಅವಾಗಿನ ಐ ವಾಸ್, ನನ್ ಧೈರ್ಯನೂ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಐ ಡಿಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದ ಕರೇಜ್ ಟು ಸೇ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಹೋಮೋಸೆಕ್ಷುವಲ್ ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ಕ್ವಿಯರ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ. I actually have sat through this Arvind coming out in one program where Manohar came out, Arvind came out, Famila came out, and then Chatura from Bombay came out. And ನನ್ಗದೆಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಹಿಂಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ದೆ. ದೆನ್ ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಲೈಕ್, ಐ ಫೆಲ್ಟ್ ಓಕೆ ಫೈನ್, there is somebody like me and a feeling bando. I went up to Chatura and I said, listen, I also feel the same antella helde. That's it. That was my last of coming out. Adadmele I eventually became friends with these people, which means that I am that. Beyond that, there is nothing coming out anta heli. The second thing I realized at one point, which was very funny, I have to share this. I don't know if it was Sides coming out or somebody else, and they had a party. For me, then at that point of time, I thought, oh, if they come out, they'll give party, which means we'll get free drinks. That was the idea. Beyond that, Sunil and I have always felt like, what is the need? Because the moment one person sees you, you will have to answer all those questions. Eventually, they will know who you are. ಹಂಗಾಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಬೇಕರಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, ಸಾಮಾನ್ ತಗೊಂಬರಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ, ಎಲ್ಲಾದ್ರೂ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. Even when those days when I used to identify as woman, even then the question, the moment you go to some place, the moment they don't see the tali, first thing is, why you are not married? I'm like, why should I be married? Allinda shuru agate. Now the question is, are you man or woman? Why is your voice like this? ಈ ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ದಿನ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಇರ್ತೀವಿ, ಆಯ್ತಾ. ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಒಂದ್ಸರ್ತಿ ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಾನು ಸುನಿಲ್ ಇಬ್ರು ಒಂದು ಆಟೋ ಹತ್ತಿದ್ವಿ. ಆಟೋ ಹತ್ತಿದಾಗ that guy asked us both, he looked at us and he said, are you both men or women? I'm like, what do you mean? So Sunil said, what do you think you are? So auto guy got very shocked. What do you mean? He turned around and he said, I'm man. Then Sunil said, okay, fine. Then auto guy said, so what are you? I'm like, Sunil said, whatever you think, whatever you want to think, it's okay. I don't want to explain what I am. The auto guy got so angry that he made us get down the auto and not pay, and he just left. These kind of funny things have happened. So this coming out antalla andaga nange it finds very alien, but of course parties madidre I'll be very happy.
You make us, on the other side you make us cry. You please decide what you want. You can't do simultaneously. It's very confusing. But thanks, because like the affirmation that you don't have to be anyone or anything, just yourself. It sounds liberating, but it also sounds very difficult, because someone or the other is always trying to make sense of what you are. And he reacted seemingly out of his own fear, as opposed to and his own, like, perhaps discomfort with his self-identity that manifested in this way, right? And you obviously experienced that as well. Dipankar, can I ask you what this means to you, and how do you think about, what comes to mind when you think about coming out?
So I've actually not thought about this in so much detail as like possibly people who've had to speak about it on public forums have had to, for a long time. So I was really thinking about it today, for me, what it meant. And sort of going from what Rumi is saying, I think which is something that you told me earlier, which is, I'm going to talk a little bit about what coming out to myself meant to me first, versus there's obviously coming out to the world. And then there's coming out to you when you begin to, question who you are and then try to understand who you are, and vis-a-vis the rest of society. So I think in that sense, I think it's something that I really did by myself. It's something that I didn't really have much help with. I didn't have people to, reflect things off of me. I didn't have people to share, like teenage, puberty related, like, nonsense, but very important nonsense with, I didn't. So in some ways, I feel like now that I'm able to actually articulate this and I have peers and I have people around me, I sometimes I feel like I'm a teenager now, because I'm figuring out certain things about like what it means to live in society as a like sexual, gendered, interpersonal being, but in society, but with a community, right? Like with a sisterhood or a brotherhood or friends or exes or crushes or whatever. And it's like for almost until I was 18, 19 or 20, that was all just within me, and possibly reflecting my own fears, and more of the negative than the positive, is reinforced at that time, because you're anyway you're not very confident, you're not very, and yeah, we perceive things, so we know that we're not part of the mainstream, we're not the norm, so that's why you tend to go in a bit. In terms of coming out, I think weirdly enough, all of that said, I'm one of the rare, I think very rare people who, especially in our country, who actually didn't have to come out to their parents, who actually, and whose parents fully, accept me and embrace me, and, in fact, are learning sort of with me. So in that sense, I feel very, very lucky. And that is something that I think I have really benefited from. So yeah, just basically if you can begin to externalize, so coming out means that you can start talking about it. You can start, that starts to happen. And then, so you need someone to kind of do that with. And ideally we have everyone to do it with. But yeah, more and more. Something I just wanted to end with though is that like, I feel like when you start coming out, coming out, I think necessarily comes with labels, which is what I'm getting from Rumi. Whereas like, if I'm just having a conversation with you and telling you who I am, I don't need to label myself. Like I'm just telling you who Dipankar is. But if I need to come out, I need to be like, oh, I'm gay or this or that or something. And I think there's value in that, there's power in that, because you can claim something and then it also almost helps you become that and then question it further and all of that. But then I think after a point you start questioning that also. So I think like right now I'm in this place where you're like balancing the comfort and the capacity that like having a boundary, having a label gives you, but also like constantly knowing that I'm actually more than the label, and I do have the freedom to be beyond because I'm, what gay or straight or whatever it could be, So
That was a
yeah.
lovely answer. That was really beautiful, Dipankar. Thanks for sharing that with us, and that too with like so much honesty. I also saw the parallel with Rumi's answer on the teenage, And in a certain way, Aarti's earlier answer about living with her mom and grandmom, about growing up and have to care for them. There were 2 points. One is caring for someone makes you also care for yourself, and I suppose that explains good health. But in the specific context that you spoke of, the teenage, and Rumi's own transition right now and having to rediscover his voice and his relationship with himself and another person, it's really evocative. So it's nice that we can see these parallels. I, for one, also hate labels. I think they're meaningless things which are constraints. They don't. If labels can be tools of liberation, they're great. But as tools of oppression, they are the worst. And I think nothing can be more cruel than labels. In the damage that it does. Arvind, what would you like to say about this? Your own thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was thinking of what does this word coming out mean? And perhaps you can link it to Article 19(1)(a), the freedom of speech and expression. It's really about the idea that you have a chance to establish your individuality and personhood in the world, that you're not a part of the anonymous background of the world at large, and that there's something about you which is so specific and so individual, and that like to express it and place it in the in the world as well. And I think what both Dipankar and Rumi have communicated quite strongly is that the world doesn't have a place for this expression of individuality, and what you want is to make a space for that expression of individuality, and that's really what I think at a deeper level what coming out is about. Saying that and the expression of individuality is of course very closely linked to the question of dignity, right? And the question linked to the question of personhood, and linked to the question of the fact that that we are all not part of an anonymous, amorphous, in this case, in the sexuality context of a heterosexual self. That there are many other diverse streams which exist, and the world needs to make a space for the diversity of these streams to express themselves. And I think coming out is one way in which people try and say that we want to claim our space in this world as individuals, as people, entitled to the same sense of dignity and rights as everybody else.
Okay, so both points, one on individuality and the other on claiming space. So clearly there's an inward-looking opinion and an outward-looking worldview simultaneously. No, Arvind, isn't that what you're suggesting? To say that the inward-looking one is a journey in the direction of your individuality,
yeah,
and outward-looking one is a manner of finding the freedom of association.
You look at it, right? I mean, say freedom of speech and expression. What is speech and expression based on? Speech
but
and
also association, right?
The fact that there's you yourself come to, as Dipankar put it, you come to an understanding that there is something about you which is different from the world at large. Once you have that understanding that you are different, then comes the second moment where you want to express that difference, right? And expressing that difference is about, it could be in different ways. It could be artistically, in terms of through being a part of Shunya for a number of years. It could be being a student in Nalsar for a number of years. It could be like Rumi in terms of music, right? In terms of the way one expresses that. And I think that coming out thing, if you put it in the broadest possible sense, obviously it applies very, very closely to the three generations of women living as well, right? What does it mean to express a different model of living as compared to what the mainstream model exists? It's about
Arvind has found his views for the evening. Arti. So we're going to keep coming back to three generations of women. Dipankar, can I? Yeah, sorry.
Like general, like something I was thinking about was that in a way, sometimes if you're lucky and all of that, I feel like queer people and anyone who identifies as queer, and begins to question the heteronorm, have almost a head start, because that act of sort of in this sense, because that act of sort of coming out, so on the road which is about self-discovery and about understanding who you are, we're sort of forced to really ask that question much earlier than I think other people sometimes. So in that way, I think sometimes, it's like, that's because everyone should do it. Everyone should. I think everyone at some point starts asking these questions and then wants to express themselves, like he said. So,
I can't agree more, because this is why Arti's perspective on this is also going to be super interesting. Dipankar, you and I have spoken about this as well, right? Like the courage required to express your gender and sexual identity means that you're actually more okay with dismantling most norms. For instance, I feel like if more of us felt that way, we would actually make more interesting choices, like wear nail paint, for instance, because it looks cool, or you want to, or like pink is the most lame example. It's nice to see that that's changed a lot, and thanks to hipsters for that. One of the things in the world that we can thank hipsters for. But other than that, I can't agree more with you. But Aarti, what are your thoughts on this, like three women under a roof, and in the context of when someone says coming out, what does it mean to you? What have you?
I mean, of course, I'm sort of acutely aware that the phrase is sort of restricted to and very often only we only think of queer people sort of announcing, as it were, publicly their identity, either to family or friends, or and we use the phrase coming out in that context. And I've had over the years family, very very close friends from college and much after that come out in that traditional sense of what the phrase means. But I actually think that it has so much more. And I'll start with stuff that I've been sort of following, which is this whole Pinjara Tod movement of women daring to defy hostile deadlines, and has begun with that, and then sort of snowballed into so much more about what it means for women to be out in public spaces, what it means for women to occupy spaces late at night, what it means to be able to rent your own house. I think that when you think about women, and I'm talking about straight women here, heterosexual women here, who might make non-traditional or untraditional choices, either of living on their own, or not choosing to have children despite being married, or choosing to have children not being married, or not getting married at all. All of these sorts of what are perceived to be unpopular, or what we would call not traditional choices, are all in some way coming out of a framework of heteronormativity and patriarchy that we've possibly been sort of conditioned and socialized into. And I think that my aunt, that's my mother's brother's sister, my uncle passed away very young, and my aunt has therefore had to live without her spouse for a number of years now. She lost him when she was in her late 30s. And we were talking just the other day about being a very young widow, as it were, and what it has meant for her to live in a city like Bangalore, and raise two children and put them through school and college by herself. And so for me, I think really, the gamut of, taking off from what Arvind said, some of it is definitely 19 in terms of what is the expression of one's own self, and how does one find a way of in this extraordinary sort of constitutional framework of building that sort of expression in. But I also think so much of it is about equality. So women, for example, leaving violent husbands and violent homes and choosing to step out of a relationship of that kind is still today an extraordinarily difficult choice to make. And if we're looking at being, on the one hand, you have the ability, this constitution has the ability of delivering on, say, reading down of 377 and being apologetic. If you look at one part of that judgment on what it has meant to have 377 on the statute book, and what it has meant historically for a number of generations of queer people. On the other hand, that same constitution finds it very, very hard to step inside a home and address inequalities that arise inside that home. So we still have young women being compelled into marriages, intercaste marriages still receiving the kind of violent sort of backlash that they do today, interreligious marriages, of course, choices of food and meat and beef and all. So really it is, expression in that sense is all of these things and more, right? So it's also a question of equality and expression, I think. So when you're thinking of women and queer women as well, queer women running away from home or having been pressured into marriage and then subsequently having to run away with lovers and deal with very difficult police and criminal justice, all of these things about coming out in some way, about dismantling setups that we're stuck with, and frankly, they're all patriarchal setups in some way, right? I mean, that seems to be at the core. I think, if at all, if I were to identify a singular problem, it would be that, and stemming from that, all these various sort of threads of what I would say are requiring to step out of that framework of patriarchy. So yeah, that I think that's what was sort of running through my mind. Yeah.
That's a great answer, because there are two parts to that, right? One is the burst of expression, just the urge to be the fullest of yourself and not have anyone like object to it, and to have society and others and even yourself to make space to allow for their expression. That's one thing I took from it. Stay. Arvind was speaking of it, because Rumi already spoke about this earlier, but enough with the build-up. But the idea of communion that we can find with fraternity and the freedom to associate, the communion that you can build around this act of self-identification is such an important aspect of being. So it seems like there too we have a constitutional duty to exercise that freedom, to find others who might be on that journey and enable them in every way we can, right? Unless there's any harm caused to someone else, there's no reason why someone's fullest expression must not be supported. We keep talking about the restrictions on freedoms, but I think we don't talk enough about freedom itself. We find it much easier to talk about unfreedom and what is beyond those boundaries, and that's really a pity. So thanks for reminding us of that, Aarti. Arvind, I'd actually like you to reflect on this, because this you obviously have this capacity to operate at the meta level. It would be wonderful to see how you're assimilating these things.
I'm sorry, I did take us on a bit of a constitutional journey, but
why are you talking about that? That's not something that we should ever be sorry for.
No. I'll finish my point. but there's a but. But it's also important to recognize and acknowledge the fact that a lot of this has happened before the Constitution came into place. And I think it's a beautiful piece actually by colleague Lawrence Liak. When he wrote this post the Nas judgment. It was called Aarti, do you remember the name of that article? It was called the article which Lawrence wrote. Lawrence with Saidi.
You're talking about the Nas Foundation article that he wrote.
Yeah. I don't remember if it came in Kafila or Orinam, or maybe both. But
well, I'm not getting the name now. But
we'll find it.
The concept which you're trying to explain, right? It was called The City of Words. The article was called The City of Words, and the beautiful point he made there is this judgment is a beautiful and very, very important judgment, but we should never ever forget that the LGBT community, way before the judgment, established little communities of love. And that was something which was prior to the judgment, existed parallel to the judgment. In a sense, that's what Rumi is indicating. The fact that it's in what you call solidarity, what you call fraternity, what you call community, that these forms of life are established, which really serve as a predecessor to the judgment. The judgment follows that, as it were, And so that's maybe the point to think about. And I think the phrase he took from, I think, Cavell, was to talk about what he called the little communities of love, right? And so that's I think what you take, in a sense, from the experience of the LGBT community. And we learn so much from the experiences of people, of our friends, including Rumi and Sunil, and the kinds of communities they've established, really at the ground level, And if you think of it, the invocation of Rumi was friendship at the very beginning itself. So.
Yeah, and that was friendship and crossing kept coming back in each of the pieces that Rumi sang, right? Okay, so now I have a slightly different question to ask all of you. So you have to, what is one thing that you want to see less of from society around you in the context of your capacity to express yourself as freely as you can? Yeah. understand or interpret this question to mean that you can suggest structures, policies, but reflect one priority, right? You could pick dignity, you could pick like safe public transportation, you could pick social security and welfare, you could pick state subsidy for transitions, whatever you want, you can pick, right? But reflect one priority that you want to see more of, one priority you want to see less of, while thinking about you exercising your fullest expression. Yeah, and Dipankar, we'll start with you and then go around. What do you feel?
Okay. You're asking me to name something that I would like the state to care less about and something that I would like them to care a lot more about.
Enable more of, and disable more of, like active disablement, so to say, not just to say we will not act and therefore that is disablement.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very, very tough one to give like a specific answer to. If you ask me sort of like an idea or a concept or something like that I would like them, that I would like all of us to give more priority to or give less to, I could probably answer you. I would say something that we should give more of a priority to is I mean, I think it's overstated, I guess, but I think now we're approaching this word, in other words, with new meaning. But I guess empathy, and at a deeper level than empathy, just the fact that actually we're not different, and we come from the same place, we go to the same place, 6 degrees of separation, we drink the same, we breathe the same air, however you want to look at it, right? Like we're all interconnected beings. And so coming from that, some empathy, that if that could really be a higher priority, I think that would change how we do a lot of things.
Can I just ask you to put a finer point of that? Like, so for instance, be more specific. How do you want them, like if you have to teach someone how to be empathetic, right? Empathy is not obvious. Empathy is difficult.
I mean, again, it's tough. What's coming to me is that I think we'll have to get much slower.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we are to make connections with people and actually go outside our, expand ourselves, and especially if you're, making policy decisions, all kinds of things, then I think we'll have to be a bit slower about how we do everything. So maybe just recognizing, that the pace at which we do things is very connected, and that comes back to productivity and, all of that kind of stuff. So bringing down the pace of things, I think could help us connect to each other more.
Okay, I'm gonna so the way I'm interpreting this, Dipankar, correct me if I'm wrong, is that suggesting that it's not so much policy that you need to change, but the people who are working on policy need to have an attitude which is not just more empathetic in the way of speaking, but be able to sense what in the world. So if they can experience it and nourish it and go slow, as you said, then it enables a certain positive consequence in policy making. Yeah, so that's how I'm going to interpret what you said.
I guess it all flows. I'm not saying like policy is not important, but obviously the policies are made by people, the systems are made by people, all of that. So
yeah, it's definitely not the same continuum. How can you have policy without feeling? It's senseless to have policy without feeling. So it's like, so I guess that makes sense. Rumi, what would you like the state or society to do more of or less of? And I invite you also to be as specific as you like. You can say, I wish we really had better public transport because it's such an indignity to, I can't imagine if this is one auto ride, for you, it must be countless auto rides, right? Literally every exchange that you have with anyone in society might be like, making you somewhat feel small or weird about being yourself. I mean, I really admire your courage to still be yourself. I can't even imagine what it takes to be that way. So what do you think we should do more of as a state? Rumi, you've muted yourself. You have to unmute yourself. One nimsha.
Uh,
We can hear you now.
yeah. So basically, I want to say two things here. At a general level, I would say state, society, whatever. I want them to become slightly less intolerant. It's okay if they are curious. Being curious, it's okay. I can understand they need information. We can provide information, but can't be like intolerant and be impatient. Especially when we are having this negotiations with people, especially in police stations, where you're trying to tell something to the police and the police just do not want to listen to you at all. They just shut you up. So
Rumi, we lost you. I think our internet is working. Looks like I can see all other heads moving. Rumi, we lost you for a moment. You said this thing about police stations.
huh.
Yeah, continue to speak, please.
Yeah. So recently I went to a. I can't hear now.
Go for it. We can hear you. We can hear you. Go for it.
Okay, fine. So recently I went to a police station for some negotiation, and the man just screamed at me, saying that shut up. I don't like people speaking too much. And even before I could start, he shut me up. And, I was emotionally upset for the whole day, that maybe because of my age or whatever, I have felt insulted in that police station and so on and so forth. But I feel generally that is one thing. But on the other hand, state as such, especially these days, when we are going and trying to negotiate with the government, especially in terms of getting policies done, trying to set up trans welfare board and so on and so forth and all that, the amount of explanation, at least I, after 20 years of very active activism in this field, I feel tired of explaining all over again and again and again and again in front of those officials, saying that how this is not abnormal, how this is not unnatural, how this is not something immoral, and to explain that they do not have patience to understand what it means about the sexual and gender expressions of female assigned people. The only thing that they can understand is hijra on the road. That's it. Like beyond that, if you want to. So recently there was some chairperson of this social justice and empowerment committee, some chairperson IS officer, who came and said that what if we all name you Kinnar or Hijras? And we were like, what are you trying to say? Trans diversity is very, very different, and queer and trans issues are very diverse. You cannot like just collapse everything and put one name. What is your fantasy in giving this one name to everybody? I mean, if that is the one name that you want to give, say transgenders. Then they said, oh, so you want Ubhailing? I said, I'm not Ubhailing. How they use words, it becomes extremely challenging to speak to these government officials. And they actually, one, I feel that like, somebody should take a class to all of them. First of all, like make them shut up and listen to the whole thing. And second thing is that, in the policies, they're not ready to understand the needs of different trans diversity issues. Like they can, if they can only think of giving, even now 20 years later, even now there are things, they still think of giving buffaloes and sheep to people for self survival and so on and so forth. So which becomes extremely difficult. Like we've so many times condemned all these things, and even now we have to go back. And so it's these days I feel like I'm tired, I don't want to go anywhere. So what I would like the state to change, study on us. I ask them to study on us. We are ready to teach you. We have the patience to teach you. Please have patience to listen and then frame policies, because most of the policies that are framed are an extension from some other community, like either from women or Dalits or Muslims or minorities. It is like that. We get the kind of last bits of everything. That's how they look at us. So that's exactly what I want to change. I'm being very, very particular in this whole process.
Thanks. You have been very particular, and you started with the police station, which for most of us is not a place of regular visit. It's not like, okay, I'm going to the grocery shop, I'm going to the police station. That doesn't happen at all. And for me personally, and for most people in my kind of like upper caste, extremely privileged kind of setting, the police station is a place for fear. It's a place for crime, anti-social elements. It's so much judgment, right? And so much fear associated with it.
Yeah.
When you say that start by just listening, there's nothing more to do. I think we need Arvind to take a class on this. So Arvind, why don't you go next and use it as an opportunity to respond to Rumi, and also for yourself, based on your years of work across nations, across continents, across yourself, many selves and your friends, the structures you've enabled. We could hear you forever, Arvind. So please, by all means.
Very generous. But what I was trying to think about what Dipankar and Rumi said, and I think I agree with what Dipankar says. What we miss in a sense is this quality of, we want to call it love, we want to call it empathy. That's what we miss, right? And the fact that you don't feel the ability to empathize with another human being. And I think the question you asked is, how then do you cultivate that sense of an empathy? And one part of it is, I think, goes back to Rumi's entire evocational experience, right? I mean, when you say you haven't been to a police station, then Rumi's point is you should go to the police station. Everyone should have that
So it's
experience.
as much to me as it is to
I was not referring to you in particular.
right, to us all, right? Like in a certain, are you suggesting that it's a matter of our engagement with the police station as well as like the
I'm
police?
just taking the point which Rumi's point and your point, but in a sense the limitations of experience because of where we come from, right? And Rumi's thing is in some sense a transcendence of that limitation by the work that he's doing. I mean, the fact that he's going to the police station on a regular basis, again, is not something which is natural to a middle class surrounding, as it were. But the fact that Rumi goes means that Rumi's life is immeasurably enhanced by this range of experiences. So that's one part of it. Experience could be one way of cultivating a sense of empathy. But experience is not everything. But I realize this because we had this actually very, very interesting conversation with Justice Shah when we invited him for the ALF 10th anniversary talk. He came and spoke here, etc., etc. And we asked him, so how did you write the judgment which you wrote? Where did that idea really come from? And we all thought there'd be this great coming out story. He said, I met this gay man. Da, 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 da. He said, I never met a gay person in my life. I just wrote this judgment. And then what it tells you is the power of imagination, right? He was able to put himself in the shoes of someone who he had never seen, never met. And that's the power of the how you cultivate that power of imagination, the power of being in the shoes of another person. I realized that also during the hearings where he had this, I thought, one of the most incredibly sensitive moments where the government council was speaking what you say, sex with a sneer, right? Saying, how what these people are like, kind of a thing. And Justice Shah, in a very gentle reprimand, said that, see, this is the council, this is the way we speak about these issues in coffee table breaks or cigarette breaks. And we have to break that way of speaking. And for a man who had never met a gay person or LGBT person to say that, I said that exhibits a certain level of empathy, which came, I think, fundamentally from cultivation of imagination. I think imagination. The third point, of course, would be in that sense education. Right? How do you cultivate a sense of imagination? Is it, if not through experience, is it through reading and literature and being able to put yourself in the shoes of another, or art, putting yourself in the shoes of another person? But again, I guess the problem maybe is, how does this imagination, experience, and education come together in your life? And that's I think the challenging one, because as you rightly said, some of us may be in the sphere of experience, others may be in the sphere of completely of imagination, right? And if all three come together, there's a certain power which it can give to your ideas and to your expression and to the work that you do.
Okay, that's a great answer, Arvind. It's not surprising at all. It's
Can I just add, I just
yeah.
thought of one slightly specific thing which I should have thought of straight away, but Arvind mentioned it, which is that, I mean, yeah, I think like one of the ways in which anyone, and that includes the state, can begin to like understand the non-empirical and the expansive, which is things like love and empathy, is through the arts. And I definitely think that, because that's what, like, when you engage with the arts, that those are the muscles that you are exercising, those are the, you know, the things that you're doing. And I think that's definitely one very, actually could be quite a simple thing that and specific thing that, yeah.
It's so simple. It's so simple. Thanks for saying that, Dipankar. I should have brought it up, if even if you didn't. It is. I mean, it's been all of your work as well, right? And in a certain way, I'm interpreting Arvind's answer to mean that this Rumi just messaged us saying he has to leave. So please, Rumi, by all means, nobody needs to be here. You want to say bye to us and then leave? Okay, no. Rumi said bye in spirit. So in any case, so thank you so much for joining us. We will express our gratitude to you more deeply at the soonest, earliest opportunity. But Dipankar and Arvind, what I took from your responses is essentially that there is an algorithm to making seeing love in the world, and that is through the arts. And I really liked your example, Arvind, because I remember that the 10th anniversary celebrations that you had, this was quite a while ago now, right? And what was very nice about it is that you arrived at love from first principles, from constitutional principles. This is what we've been like, this is what we've created for ourselves. We already have the tools and capacities for our liberation. You have imagination, you have access to education, you have access to experience, and anything is possible. There's no reason to feel constrained by circumstance, by reality, in your desire to be as full, as fully as yourself as possible, not as full of yourself as possible, which is a different aspiration. Aarti, what do you have to say about this idea of, okay, what kind of policies or what kind of circumstances can we design to enable smoother coexistence? I mean, like, enable fullest expression.
I think there's something, very sort of crucial and critical here that we might be missing, and which is essentially to talk about how is it that we raise our children? What is it that goes into school education, which is able to integrate ideas of respect, consent, diversity? And why is it that we don't really spend enough time with kids at very young ages to start thinking about these things? Because honestly, by the time you're hitting college or after that, you've already had a fairly long sort of experience in understanding these things. And I feel that the way in which we are raising our sons, or the way in which we are raising our daughters, needs to undergo a phenomenal transformation. And a part of that is certainly looking at education in formal educational establishments, because that is where a large part of a child's day eventually gets spent. And somewhere I feel that that part of looking at policy gets ignored very often. And then suddenly you have an 18 or a 20-year-old in college, and you're then having to ingrain these things. If college is away from home, and this is the first time, which is, I would imagine, the first time, say for me certainly, and I would imagine for a lot of people here, that you are coming in contact with people from a very, very diverse sort of background, preferences, choices, living, etc. Then you are arriving a little late into that scenario without having this spade work done. That's one thing. The second thing that I think, and I think there is no doubt in my mind that I think the idea and the understanding of uh, gender in terms of how it plays out within the home is something that has to be integrated in some way into school education. The way we understand roles, traditional roles, gender roles, these are all things that we can't afford to wait till one is in their 20s to kind of wake up to this idea that we might be living and need to live with a very, very wide sort of diversity of thought in this.
Sorry.
And I think that things like my friend and I over the last 3 years have been bringing his children to Pride, the Pride March, and one is turning 8, the other one is 5, and I think if you don't start this, if you don't start building this from that age, right? And of course, these are kids of privilege because they have a father like they do, and they have me as a friend, and we want them to be able to think that no matter who they are, that they will always have extraordinary love and support and affection. But if we don't start doing this in formal education in some way, whether I'm only sort of pointing out the sexuality aspect of this, but it's actually also caste and religion. And if we don't start doing this very, very early on, and if we don't start doing it in formal education, then I suspect we're not really going to be seeing the sort of transformation that we would like to see.
I want to say, I want to borrow from Dipankar here and add one layer of celebration to this, because actually life is beautiful with so much diversity. It's so nice to have so many types of people and so many beings that evolve in so many directions, right? We celebrate biodiversity in nature. Why don't we celebrate biodiversity amongst ourselves? And our biodiversity is manifested in our forms of expression socially, which is uniquely what we've evolved to do. Why can't we evolve in the direction of like being more loving and being kinder and making more space? And the fact that we keep coming back to education, I remember, I think it was Mark Twain or Arvind, who said the only time my education was interrupted was when I was in school. And like education, formal or informal, is a continuing process. And Aarti, I really liked how you spoke of the love and the relationships that you have as a privilege, because that's something that anyone can access. It's not, there's no price to that privilege. There's no privilege to that privilege. And really the aspiration here is to notice the joyous accidents of birth. Not to just think of them as mistakes, but think of them as possibilities of more ways of being. So I think the celebration of it, which is why I love the name Pride, like, wow, it means to be proud, to be full of yourself. And it really doesn't seem like any one type of people's celebration, but really humanity celebration, And so that's what I'm getting from the way you're speaking of education, because I feel like you're suggesting that we open hearts and minds in the direction of living a certain way. And that's nice. And so, without me noticing, for a second episode in a row, it's already 9:20, which is when we move towards our last question. But trust me, this will give you enough opportunity to assimilate your thoughts. This exercise, lawyers, artists, and others talk law, love, and equity, is, as we have said before, broadcast media inspired by love for beauty and love for wisdom, which we think are fundamental tools for self-liberation, right? And so the transaction here is that we celebrate and nourish each other. And so there's a little fundraiser which is on. Please participate in it if you could. Your vibes are more important than your money, but your money means a lot to a lot of people, right? Even small amounts of money. The links here in our chat, feel free to exercise it. It's been made alive through a collaboration between a few organizations, Just Learning, which is interested in building the architecture for love and justice to be inevitable in the world. There's Gather, which is interested in designing human interactions and building communities, increasing the amount of communion in the world. There is Legal Hackers, which is an enterprise which is inspired by the hacking movement in software, to the DIY aspiration in relation to justice, because law and justice is one of those things we take for granted without really examining new models, right? So it's to introduce a sense of playfulness and make justice a little more like Play-Doh, as opposed to these staid images, which is why, as you can see at our poster as well, Lady Justice is on a skateboard and she has this really cool jacket and carrying a sword, and the fierceness is nice. So we can play with it and play with her and come up with new models. There's also Help a Stranger, which is a software that we've just built. We are figuring out a distribution still, where you can nominate the strangers from your life, street vendors, house helps, cab drivers, whoever you like, and you can arbitrarily donate money to them directly into their account, right? So our aspiration is to build a parallel tax system which is based on kindness, as opposed to this feeling of extraction, which is really not a nice vibe to share in our coexistence. So the question that I'd like to close with, and I'd like for all of us to mull over, is how you think about giving and charity in and through your work and outside of it in life as well, right? It could be cooking a meal, it could be educating another person, as all of you have been doing. So I invite you to consider ways of giving that you exercise and you think one must exercise outside of what you've already said, but feel free to expand upon those ideas as opposed to repeating them necessarily. And this time, what we'll change up the order a little bit. Aarti, we'll start with you, go on to Dipankar, and then Arvind. I'm not going to interrupt you in between. Feel free to interrupt each other, though. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have decency to be able to have conversation which is slow. It's such a privilege to be able to speak knowing that you're being heard, and I think that's the aspiration of Pride as well. And I hope we're all able to cherish it and nourish it around us and with ourselves. So Aarti, first up with you.
Wow, I mean, I'm going to say how I mean, this changes, kind of evolves constantly with me. There's a part of it that's professional, in the sense that I believe that one ought not to turn down a case because the client can't afford to pay. I don't recall ever having done it, and I hope that I can continue to stand on that side of that sort of professional commitment. And I think that part of what I'm able to give is perhaps the most it's more concrete, it's tangible, because not that I'm saying that there is enormous transformation to people's lives when they are represented in a case, or they have to be represented in a case, or whatever it might be. But I think there's an ability to deliver on a small aspect of their lives that they are struggling with or might be in a difficult position on. So I believe that is certainly the base from which a lot of what I certainly don't consider it charity. I must say that very quickly. I do think that every single person in this country has a constitutional right to be represented competently and be defended zealously, in a court of law. It's not an act of charity in that sense, but it is certainly, for me, the way in which I feel that you have the ability of sort of perhaps offering a different sort of outcome or a choice to a person of a situation that they may be stuck in. And I think this is especially true of women who find themselves to be in violent marriages or in extraordinarily difficult positions, to be able to litigate their cases in such a way that it is not just about the act of litigating their cases, but also opening up other ways in which they look at themselves and view the world. So I think that would be the large part of how I would look at it. But I do think that several other equalizing platforms of people immediately around you. And I think all of us do this, but if we don't, and if we're able to expand the way we do it, it's time that we started sort of thinking about it. Of course, none of these things are also charitable exercises, but things like being able to put kids through school, especially girls, through school and college and beyond. A lot of them might just about get through school, but it gets harder when they have to get through college and beyond college if they so desire. And that is certainly a large chunk of what I think requires my immediate attention. So people immediately around me, whether they're children of watchmen or domestic help or people like that, certainly do get that sort of attention. There is, I think, something that we often tend to overlook, and maybe it's because we think that we are all similarly placed socioeconomically, or better placed, or more or less somewhere on in some broad spectrum, in that same spectrum, is to be able to help out close friends. And I think we don't do this enough. Close friends in very tight situations of emergency, that certainly gets a part of what I think is the last, which is far more recent and something that I've been sort of trying to do over the last couple of years, has been to make choices about where I buy things from. And that, in my case, it is largely, I'd say, handloom, saris and things like that, and making very, very conscious choices about buying from weavers cooperatives or buying from non-profits who work very closely with weaving communities directly, and so on. So I think that I think what you need to do is to sort of, what I do is to sort of sit down and look at the various things that I do externally, whether it's work-wise or the people in my life, and I sort of try and see how do you maximize making life easier. In some ways, these includes things like making life manually easier in terms of labor, of how domestic help wash clothes in their own house, right? I mean, do they have do things like washing machines and refrigerators, and does this make life easier? It certainly makes my life easier, so I would imagine that it would make theirs easier as well. So to decrease the kind of manual physical labor of a class that actually manually labors in other people's homes on a regular basis. So I try, this is the way in which I sort of think it through. But like I said, it kind of a more recent thing has been to support journalism of a particular kind. So particular sorts of journalists, particular sorts of publications that need to be supported. So to really look at the world that one is living in, and to see where the maximum, that not because it's an act of charity, but because one wants to consume and be part of that universe, that because one gains from free and fearless journalism, for example, and to look at what is the world that one wants to live in, and therefore how does one try and get closer to that for as many people as possible. So yeah, that would be, I suppose, what I would imagine. Yeah.
That's an amazing answer, Aarti. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And like what I'm taking from you is that it seems like there's a continuity in your principle. You're just applying it to everyone, and fundamentally there's an orientation towards being able to enable another person's, be more conscious of how we consume and what we consume. If you have any recommendations, leave it for us in our chat and we'll share it with others who are here, because we should buy more local, right? Like, capitalism is dead, long live a version of it which is driven by capital of love, capital of communion,
No, I will.
Yeah, so please do. And
I will. Yeah.
Thank you. And this, I know Dipankar has a lot to say about this as well. Dipsy, how do you think about giving in and through your work in your life and your living?
So I think, like, I have really more and more come to realize that being of service, or giving is actually a really important part of even one's own journey. And especially when you start looking at when you start living, in the ideas that we are not separate, and we're a community and things like that. Then you really start to understand how when you start that act that, so in that way it's also quite selfish, and at least for me that makes it a bit easier because it strengthens the fact that we're actually one. um like Aarti was saying, I think there are many, like even for me, I think there are just many ways in which this can manifest, because it really becomes something that you can really apply to, like the choices that you make, what you buy, where do you go, what do you read, what do you what do you support monetarily or not, and otherwise, and lots of things. So I think it shows up like that for me. Of course, I think it's important, that as much as possible, I give back, like monetarily and physically, in that sense, as much as I can. And I hope to be in a place someday where I can do a lot more of that, because I definitely think that's a very, very important thing. Um, the other way in which I look at it is I look at it in terms of my work. So, for example, I am training in something which I think will help people, deal with their psychophysical selves, will help them express themselves. I'm working in a way that's helping people express themselves through the arts, to heal themselves through the arts. So, I think it kind of galvanizes me in a way to be more focused about what I'm doing, because I know that if I'm doing something, and I think it's very important now to be doing something that you think is going to give, back to self or to other in some way. And then I think if you know that you're doing that, then it just galvanizes me even more to keep doing what I'm doing. And I see that somewhere as as the drive that comes from that is also me putting in energy uh, into something that's larger than just me. um, and lastly, I want to share the definition of this word that I've heard, the word sacrifice. And the definition of that word that I've heard, which I resonate with a lot, is that sacrifice is the giving up of some part of yourself or some idea of yourself, so that you can be in more intimate relationship with the other. And so I kind of see it as that, and that can really become like a moment to moment thing, and if you see yourself as a person or an organization or a state or whatever entity, you can still kind of apply that.
Mhm. I love that answer. There's that. Sorry, did I interrupt you? Were you about to say
No,
something?
I was done. The
No?
last thing actually I was just going to say, which was related to the earlier point, was that how amazing the internet is for, especially now, because especially for people who are growing up with the internet, like, they have access to stories, to artists, to people who are talking about non-binary, ness, and gender, not conforming to gender, and all kinds of stuff. And you can see the difference, and it might be more in an urban context now, and hopefully that will change. And but just that the internet is awesome, and especially for this. Yeah.
Amazing. There's also a band called The Internet, which has an amazing Tiny Desk, NPR Tiny Desk concert. People should check it out if they haven't. But Dipsy, what I'm taking from what you're saying is, and I think it's really what you've been saying all evening, I think, which is that there's a sense of continuity between one and me and you and us. And the idea of living in a way that is giving through your life operates in you and around you. Art is an enabler of this process, and you want to be able to share it with another. So it is a really beautiful way of capturing it through the vocabulary of sacrifice. I like the idea that sacrifice makes you bigger as opposed to feel smaller. It's consistent with what Aarti was talking about in the context of charity, which is charity, which is not dignifying, is not charity. Like charity, which is entirely about the charitable actor, is not charity. And but if it is a matter of service, then there is a matter of an outcome. And sacrifice allows you to sort of anchor in the consequence of your action towards another. So thanks for sharing that with us. Arvind, last words, first words.
Last words. Sure. Yeah, no, I was just thinking, right, in terms of the entire lockdown period, what are the stories which have moved us or which have kind of made us rethink a lot of things we take for granted? And I think one of the for the I think for the country as a whole, one of the points which moved everybody very deeply was the migrant crisis, right? In terms of the images which we saw on the screen. And in some ways, how do you get beyond the images to the stories of people, and what are the stories there really? And since it's Pride Month, I want to share one part of a queer story in the broadest sense of questioning the norms of gender and sexuality, and in the sense of talking about a broader level of empathy, the broadest possible sense, not in a narrow sexual sense, as it were. And the story is really this, of this of these two guys called Amrit and Sayub, who are both migrant workers from a small town in Uttar Pradesh. Uh, Sayub is the first. Amrit is the first guy. He leaves and then he goes and settles down in Bombay, working in a textile industry, textile mill, and then he persuades Sayub to come there as well. And Sayub ends up in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad, working in a mill. And after 3 years, they decide they want to be together. And so Sahib persuades Amrit. Amrit persuades Sahib to come to his own place in Ahmedabad, and they both start living together for 3 years or for 3+ years. And then, of course, the lockdown happens. The industry shut. They have no means of earning. And finally, when the first openness begins, not trains, first openness begins. They get onto the Amrit pays $6,000 for both these guys, and they both get onto that not tractor, but the kind of a tempo to get back to the village in Uttar Pradesh. It's very hot, and obviously the sun is beating down very, very heavily, and Amrit is not feeling very well. And at some point, he starts feeling very, very ill. And the Sahib then tells them that we need to stop, take him to the hospital. The guy says, see, if we stop now, everybody gets freaked out because they say Corona, this, that, and that. This is we can't stop now. If you get down, you just get out kind of thing. And so finally, both of them get down because it says I can't leave him. And then the image which we all saw, I'm just going to share on the screen. If you
Yes.
can't.
Wait.
Can I just share?
1 second. Sorry, I'm going to allow you to say. Unfortunately, my hegemony has been
The
exposed.
image over here, right? Can you see it?
Open it. Arvind, we can't see it. You can share now.
Yeah. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Oh man.
Arvind, we can see it. We can see it.
So
Yeah, we can see that.
this is the image which I think at least I saw it and felt, this is it's one of those tales which we don't really know, right? We don't know what the relationship between these two guys is. We just know that they got down and then Amrit kind of collapsed, and then Sahib was cradling him in his lap and asking people, say, please stop, and take him to the hospital. Takes him to the hospital, and then he dies of something like a heat stroke, right? Because and it's a completely unavoidable death. He need not have died. The only reason he died because of the unplanned, ill thought through, ridiculous lockdown, which has an impact on so many lives, and some of the lives which have come to the surface like this. Anyway, the thing is, I saw this and said, see, at one level is we can look at it and say that we're terribly moved by this, and this shouldn't be happening to anybody else. That's one part of the story. But the other part of the story is there's something we can do for these two guys. They've been through this really difficult times. So we got in touch with the journalist, which is Milind Gatwai, and got in touch, got Sahib's number, and my colleague, my friend Alok called him up and spoke to him, and he said it's very difficult because he spoke to him in Hindi, and not the Hindi he's used to as well. He is a Haryanvi, so his Hindi is any day better than mine, and but he said it's tough to understand. But what he got from him is the fact that that. A certain kind of obviously a very, very close bond. And Sahib's point is, see, I don't need any help from you guys. What Amrit needs help because his family is in a really, really bad state. And so he was the sole earning member. So Alok and we said that we will make a solidarity contribution, just so that to tide things over. It's a very difficult time, obviously, and so we collected some money from a range of people and just made that kind of a contribution to the families of these two guys. But what, not so much that we collected the contribution. What I thought was so moving is when we got in touch with Saib, he said a lot of people had made such contributions, a lot of people. And so I thought it's quite moving that tells you the capacity, people are still moved by images such as this and stories such as this. And one guy, and so many dimensions to the whole thing, right? And the communal angle also comes in a very, very strong way. And people and you could sense that was a dimension as well. In a small town in Uttar Pradesh, what is the thing that you face? Because of the fact that you dare to have a friendship, just a friendship with a guy from another religion, as it were, right? And the hero in this case is a Muslim guy, right? So all kinds of dimensions to the story, but I mean, it's something which moved me very much. And I guess just the thought that sometimes we need to pay attention to these small stories around us and see what we can do.
That was such a beautiful answer, Arvind, because it just captured so many ideas that we've been speaking about all evening, right? The love for smallness. This is so cruel. We shouldn't like do this to any one of us under any circumstances whatsoever. It's unforgivable, and that we did is a pity, and it's not the way to be. I also can't tell if my internet is holding up and I'm streaming or not. Uh, I- Hey,
Lost him.
no, we have not lost him. We have
He's back.
uh, yeah, sorry guys for causing that undue anxiety. And yeah, we can't let this happen to anyone. This is just unforgivable. But Arvind, thanks for reminding us of smallness, because that's the same thing Aarti spoke about, Rumi spoke about, Dipankar is speaking about. Small and slow, little steps, not really much to do. Be a little more, don't do much. And that seems like an easy and nice way to be, and celebrate our existence and our coexistence as much as we can. So celebrate it, enable it, and that's a nice way to like end this conversation. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's very kind of you, and such a pleasure, and so lovely. Aarti, making your acquaintance afresh. Arvind and I are always, and Dipankar and I always anyway screwing around. So it was so nice of you to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Badri. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Badri. Thanks, Dipankar. Yeah, hopefully we'll see each other in person sooner than later.
Also, by the way, I was supposed to share this at some point, but like Arvind is one of the first people who was like, for me, was someone in the queer community, like someone outside myself, in Bangalore. And I mean, he's been that for many people, I think. Yeah, so I'm glad that this
the Pride celebration, right? I mean, I remember you guys came home and we went from my house to the Pride, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Thanks for being so
Arvind, my dear friend and comrade, how many people you have done this for, Da? Thank God I know you. I'm very, very, very grateful that I know you. So,
Arvind, please, can we build a statue for you?
No.
Listen, Aarti, please let me complete my proposal. 103 centimeters, not much longer than that. Much like Spinal Tap, we'll confuse feet and inches and make a version of Arvind's magnificence. Because Arvind has also been responsible for my liberation. And every day I think about Arvind, I was like, man, I wish I was more thoughtful. I was more well-read. I was like taking care of my body better. And just being a good human being. Thanks, Arvind. Thanks for being in our...
Thanks, guys, for that very generous comments and thoughts.
Descended upon us.
All right.